The entertainment industry has seen ambitious productions stumble before. Budgets spiral out of control. Creative visions collide. Studios lose confidence. Release calendars shift. But every so often, a project becomes something more than just another film. It becomes a symbol of everything that can go right or catastrophically wrong inside Hollywood. And for months, that was the story surrounding the long-awaited Michael Jackson biopic. It wasn't supposed to be this complicated. When the project was first announced, it carried all the ingredients of a cultural phenomenon. One of the most recognizable entertainers in modern history. A production backed by major Hollywood talent. The blessing of Michael Jackson's estate. A cast led by someone with a deeply personal connection to the king of pop himself. On paper, it looked like the kind of movie that studios dream about. A film capable of attracting lifelong fans, curious younger audiences, and moviegoers simply fascinated by one of the most controversial figures ever to dominate popular culture. But somewhere along the way, confidence turned into uncertainty. Behind closed doors, reports began painting a far more troubling picture. Questions surfaced about the screenplay. Rumors circulated about expensive production challenges. Industry insiders started wondering whether the film could actually meet its planned release. Headlines that once celebrated the project gradually shifted toward speculation. Would the movie have to be delayed? Would major portions need to be res-hot? Had one of Hollywood's biggest bets suddenly become one of its biggest headaches? For a moment, it seemed entirely possible that a film years in the making might never become the blockbuster its creators imagined. And yet, somehow, the story didn't end there. Because what followed wasn't simply another production delay. According to reports, it became an extraordinary effort involving filmmakers, executives, legal advisors, and creative teams attempting to navigate obstacles that few biographical films have ever faced. The closer people looked, the clearer it became that this wasn't just about making a movie. It was about telling the story of one of the most celebrated and most scrutinized artists in music history, while balancing artistic ambition, commercial expectations, and decades of public controversy. That balancing act may have determined whether the film would collapse or stage one of Hollywood's most remarkable recoveries. To understand why this project reached that point, you first have to understand the man at the center of it all. Few performers have ever transformed popular culture the way Michael Jackson did. Long before streaming services, social media, or viral videos, Jackson had already become something much larger than a recording artist. He wasn't simply producing hit songs. He was reshaping the way the entertainment business thought about music, performance, celebrity, and visual storytelling. His rise began astonishingly early. As the youngest standout member of the Jackson 5, Michael displayed a stage presence that seemed impossible for someone his age. Audiences weren't just watching a talented child. They were witnessing a performer with instincts that many adult entertainers spend entire careers trying to develop. His voice carried emotional depth. His movements appeared effortless. His confidence captivated audiences around the world. By the early 1970s, it was becoming increasingly clear that Michael Jackson wasn't destined to remain just another member of a successful family group. He possessed something uniquely magnetic. When his solo career accelerated, that promise exploded into reality. Albums like Off the Wall, Thriller, Bad, and Dangerous didn't simply sell millions of copies. They became cultural milestones. Thriller in particular rewrote expectations for what a pop album could accomplish, eventually becoming one of the best-selling albums in history. Its music videos blurred the line between promotional content and cinematic storytelling, helping redefine the role of visual media in the music industry. Jackson's performances became events. His moonwalk instantly entered pop culture history. His military-inspired fashion became iconic. His signature glove became instantly recognizable. His concerts attracted audiences numbering in the tens of thousands, often generating scenes of emotional intensity rarely seen before or since. Fans cried. Some fainted. Others traveled across continents just for the chance to see him perform live. Success, however, rarely exists without enormous pressure. As Jackson's fame expanded, so did the world's fascination with every aspect of his personal life. Media attention became relentless. Stories about his appearance dominated magazine covers. His changing image fueled endless speculation. His private life increasingly became public entertainment. The line separating celebrity reporting from tabloid sensationalism grew thinner every year. Some coverage reflected legitimate public interest. Much of it became deeply invasive. Jackson's every decision seemed capable of generating global headlines. Whether he appeared at an awards show, traveled overseas, or simply stepped into public view, cameras followed. Eventually, discussions about Michael Jackson became almost impossible to separate into neat categories. There was the musical genius. There was the groundbreaking performer. There was the businessman. There was the humanitarian whose charitable efforts received significant recognition. And there were also the controversies that would forever shape public opinion. Perhaps no aspect of Jackson's legacy remains more divisive than the allegations of child sexual abuse that emerged during different periods of his life. It is important to distinguish between verified legal outcomes and ongoing public debate. In 1993, allegations were made against Jackson that resulted in a civil settlement. The settlement did not include an admission of guilt, and no criminal conviction resulted from that case. Years later, Jackson faced criminal charges involving another accuser. In 2005, after a highly publicized trial, he was acquitted on all counts. Even after his death in 2009, additional allegations and documentaries reignited intense public discussion. Some individuals continue to believe the accusations. Others point to the acquittal, the lack of criminal convictions, and disputes over evidence as reasons to defend Jackson's innocence. The debate remains deeply polarizing. That reality created an enormous challenge for anyone attempting to dramatize his life. How do you tell the story of an artist whose influence is almost universally acknowledged while recognizing that public opinion about his legacy remains profoundly divided? Avoid the controversies entirely, and critics might accuse the film of presenting an incomplete portrait. Focus too heavily on them, and supporters could argue the movie reduces one of history's greatest entertainers to his legal battles. Finding that balance was never going to be easy. Hollywood has wrestled with this dilemma before. Biographical films often walk a narrow path between historical accuracy and dramatic storytelling. Every decision, what to include, what to omit, how much time to devote to certain events, inevitably shapes audience perception. But the Michael Jackson project faced an even greater burden because millions of people already felt emotionally invested in the story before a single frame had been released. Fans expected celebration. Critics expected accountability. Industry observers expected controversy. And the filmmakers knew that no matter what choices they made, someone would almost certainly argue they had made the wrong ones. Yet despite those enormous challenges, momentum initially appeared strong. The involvement of acclaimed filmmaker Antoine Fuqua immediately attracted attention. Known for directing intense, character-driven films across multiple genres, Fuqua brought credibility to a project that demanded both spectacle and emotional complexity. His filmography suggested experience handling morally complicated characters rather than simplistic heroes or villains. The screenplay came from John Logan, an Academy Award-nominated writer whose previous work included historical dramas and emotionally layered stories. His participation suggested that the film aimed to become more than a traditional greatest hits biography. Then came one of the announcement's biggest surprises. The lead role would be played by Jafar Jackson. The casting instantly became one of the most talked-about developments in entertainment news. Jafar wasn't merely another young actor auditioning to portray a legendary performer. He was Michael Jackson's nephew, the son of Jermaine Jackson. That family connection immediately changed the conversation. Supporters believed no one might better understand Michael's physical mannerisms, personality, and artistic spirit. Skeptics questioned whether casting a family member might make it more difficult to present difficult moments objectively. Regardless of where people stood, almost everyone agreed on one point. The decision generated enormous curiosity. As images from production gradually emerged, many observers were struck by the remarkable resemblance. Costume design, makeup, choreography, and Jaffar's own physical performance appeared to recreate some of Michael's most recognizable looks with surprising accuracy. Social media filled with side-by-side comparisons. Fans debated every detail. Some expressed cautious optimism. Others remained unconvinced until they could see complete scenes. Either way, attention surrounding the project continued growing. Major studios understood exactly what was at stake. Musical biopics had experienced something of a renaissance in recent years. Films centered on iconic musicians demonstrated that audiences still had a strong appetite for stories about legendary performers when those stories combined compelling drama with unforgettable music. Successes within the genre raised expectations for what the Michael Jackson film might accomplish commercially. Given Jackson's unmatched global recognition, many analysts believed the movie possessed extraordinary box office potential if executed successfully. But extraordinary opportunity often comes paired with extraordinary risk. Unlike many artists whose lives have already been explored repeatedly on screen, Michael Jackson's story remained uniquely sensitive. Every creative decision risked reigniting debates that had never truly disappeared. Behind the excitement surrounding production lingered an uncomfortable question. Could any film satisfy audiences who fundamentally disagreed about the man it portrayed? That question wouldn't remain theoretical for long. Because as cameras continued rolling, reports suggested the filmmakers were confronting challenges far greater than simply recreating famous concerts or iconic dance routines. Some of the biggest obstacles hadn't appeared on a soundstage. They emerged from history itself. And before long, those obstacles threatened to reshape the entire future of one of Hollywood's most anticipated films, At First. There was little reason for anyone outside Hollywood to believe the production was headed toward trouble. From a distance, everything looked exactly the way a major studio event film should look. Carefully released production photos generated excitement across social media. Entertainment reporters highlighted the remarkable physical resemblance between Jafar Jackson and his famous uncle. Fans analyzed hairstyles, costumes, dance poses, and even facial expressions, searching for clues about how faithfully the film would recreate the defining moments of Michael Jackson's extraordinary career. Every new image seemed to reinforce the same message. This wasn't going to be a modest biopic. It was being positioned as a cinematic event. The expectations weren't simply high, they were almost impossible to measure. After all, Michael Jackson wasn't just another successful musician whose life happened to make an interesting movie. He was one of those rare figures whose influence crossed nearly every border imaginable. His records topped charts across continents. His concerts became international spectacles. His dance moves inspired generations of performers. Even decades after his biggest commercial successes, children who had never seen him perform live could still recognize the moonwalk within seconds. That kind of global recognition creates incredible opportunity. It also creates extraordinary pressure. Every audience arrives carrying its own version of Michael Jackson. Some remember the joyful young performer bursting with energy in the Jackson 5. Others think immediately of the groundbreaking artist who revolutionized music videos with Thriller. Many picture the humanitarian who donated millions to charities and used his platform to promote messages of unity and compassion. And then there are those whose first thoughts turn to the controversies that followed him for years. The filmmakers weren't simply making one movie. In many ways, they were trying to tell several different stories at once, stories that often contradicted one another depending on who was watching. That challenge became even more complicated because Hollywood itself had changed dramatically. There was a time when studios could largely control a film's public narrative. They released trailers, scheduled interviews, and shaped the marketing campaign from beginning to end. Today, that control barely exists. A single leaked photo can spark thousands of online debates within minutes. A casting decision can dominate entertainment headlines for weeks. An anonymous report from a trade publication can send fans into a frenzy long before any official statement is made. Every rumor spreads at extraordinary speed. Every production delay becomes a headline. Every behind-the-scenes disagreement is treated like breaking news. For a film as closely watched as the Michael Jackson biopic, that reality meant there was almost no room for quiet problem-solving. Even routine production developments risked becoming public speculation. And despite the excitement surrounding the project, experienced Hollywood observers understood something the average moviegoer often doesn't. Biographical films are among the most difficult productions to make successfully. Historical events must be compressed into a manageable running time. Real conversations must be recreated without inventing history. Complex relationships must be simplified enough for audiences to follow while remaining emotionally truthful. Entire years of someone's life sometimes disappear in a single transition. Other moments receive 20 minutes of screen time because they're considered essential to understanding the larger story. Every choice leaves something behind. For Michael Jackson's life, those choices carried unusual weight. His childhood alone could have filled an entire series. Born in Gary, Indiana, Michael grew up in a family that viewed music as both passion and opportunity. Under the guidance of his father, Joseph Jackson, the Jackson siblings rehearsed relentlessly, developing the precision that would eventually astonish audiences around the world. Supporters have often credited Joseph with instilling discipline that helped produce one of the greatest musical families in history. Critics, including some members of the Jackson family themselves, have described his methods as harsh and emotionally damaging. Michael spoke publicly at different points in his life about difficult memories from childhood, including the intense pressure associated with constant rehearsals and performances. Those experiences became an important part of understanding the man he would later become. Success arrived incredibly early. Privacy disappeared even earlier. Most people experience childhood away from cameras. Michael experienced it in front of millions. While other children navigated school, friendships, and adolescence, he was touring, recording, appearing on television, and becoming one of America's most recognizable young entertainers. That kind of life leaves lasting marks. Many biographers have argued that Jackson spent much of adulthood searching for experiences that ordinary people often take for granted. Whether one agrees with that interpretation or not, it has become an important part of public discussions surrounding his life. Any serious biopic would inevitably need to wrestle with those psychological questions. How do you portray a person whose emotional development unfolded under unimaginable public scrutiny? How do you separate celebrity mythology from human vulnerability? Those weren't easy questions for writers. They weren't easy questions for directors. And they certainly weren't easy questions for an actor portraying someone millions of people believed they already knew. Jeffrey Jackson understood that challenge perhaps better than anyone. Unlike many actors preparing for a historical role, he wasn't approaching Michael Jackson as a distant public figure. He had grown up within the Jackson family. That closeness brought advantages. It also brought enormous expectations. Learning choreography was only one part of the job. Capturing the rhythm of Michael's speech, the subtle pauses, the gentle smile, the unmistakable stage confidence that transformed into surprising shyness during interviews. Those qualities couldn't simply be copied. They had to feel authentic. Observers who followed the production closely noticed that Jaffer devoted significant time to studying archival footage, rehearsing performances, and working with the creative team to recreate iconic moments as accurately as possible. Early reactions from those who saw production stills suggested genuine optimism. Many longtime fans admitted they had been skeptical at first. But gradually, excitement began replacing doubt. The resemblance wasn't just physical. According to those involved with the production, considerable effort was being invested in recreating Michael's movements with painstaking attention to detail. That mattered because Michael Jackson's performances